Hello, friends. I'm super excited to introduce our guest to today. Her name is Jasmine Grace. She has an incredible story, how she was transformed from darkness of human trafficking to a journey of healing. And now she's an advocate, she's a speaker, she spoke at United Nations, and she's just incredible person. So please tune in, watch till the end. The incredible story of hope with Jasmine Grace, and it's dedicated to Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Thank you. This is Changing the World TV, and my name is Ina Taylor. I'm the interviewer and the host of incredible guest that we have tonight. Her name is Jasmine Grace. And before we start, I would like to say that this month, January, is a month dedicated to human trafficking awareness. And that's why I have purple jacket. I have purple background because that's the color of human trafficking awareness. And Jasmine Grace is a wonderful, wonderful speaker. She's an advocate. She is an incredible person who does so many wonderful things throughout United States of America. She even went to the White House, is it right?
No, the United Nations.
United Nations, even better. And she shared her incredible story. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited that we are live. It's, if I may say, before we go deeper into your story, during COVID, we had a program, a TV show called Hour of Power. It was incredible, and I'm just so thrilled to be back online because I do believe that online and social media can be used for good purposes, not only to bring distraction and just empty pleasure, but bring purpose. I'm excited to utilize this tool, the social media, to bring God's purpose, to bring inspiration, to equip people, to shine His light. And there's no greater guest tonight than Jasmine Grace. And thank you so much, Jasmine, for finding this hour tonight. And Jasmine Grace, I've heard her story. This is going to be third time. She last year, she was so kind to visit us on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And she came to Great Awakening Coffee House, where we are right now, on Cape Cod. And we had a lot of people from the community of Cape Cod gathered, and we talked about human trafficking awareness with wonderful nonprofits. And this year we will have it on January 31st, just out there. I'm announcing to everyone who's listening to me that this upcoming Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, January 31st at 6 p.m. at Great Awakening Coffee House, which is located on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, we will have human trafficking awareness, and we will have wonderful speaker Robin Leviser. She is also a survivor of human trafficking and a speaker, and she will share her story, and we will have a panel of discussion as well. Well, thank you so much for giving me time to give a little introduction. And Jasmine, hello, welcome.
Hi, Ina. Thanks so much for having me, and all these years coming down to the Cape. I always enjoy seeing you and your team of people down there, and it's just like a family away from family at this point. And so I'm thrilled to have a conversation with you and hopefully raise some awareness and reach some people that we might not be able to do that on the Cape. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know, human trafficking awareness, it's an important month. And I do believe we should be aware, and we should spread information about it every month of the year, because it's heartbreaking to learn that human trafficking, the numbers are raising, and the people who are trafficked are more than ever in times of history. And even when slavery was legalized, is it true?
Absolutely.
And so sometimes we know about human trafficking as a global issue. And I personally encountered human trafficking not as being trafficked, but on a side of observation. I'm from Ukraine, and 10 years ago, I kid you not, I felt like God would told me, just go to Moldova, go to Ukraine, and film a documentary. So if you'd like to watch a documentary on human trafficking in the former Soviet Union, please search search human trafficking in the former Soviet Union, and you will find a documentary, 30 minutes documentary in Russian language with English subtitles. So with that being said, it's a global issue that involves millions of people trafficked. It also comes down home to our neighborhood, to Cape Cod, to Massachusetts, New England. And Jasmine, you have such a powerful story, one of the most powerful stories I ever heard in my life. And tonight, I would like to ask you, just share your story, your bringing, you, Jasmine, as a young girl, your life. Just let us get to know you, your bringing, and who you are as a person growing up in New England.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a true New Englander, right? I have the accent to prove it. I'm from the North Shore area of Massachusetts. I was raised there, and I was just like your average, kid growing up in a home with two parents. I had an older brother who was 10 years older than me. And my parents, are still married to this day. But like many of us, we come from struggle. My parents, weren't involved in drugs or domestic violence, and I wasn't I wasn't sexually abused as a child. But for me, it was more of the mental illness piece when my mother struggled. And, we growing up all need love and attention and care. And my mom just wasn't able necessarily to really provide that. So for me, I just always had this emptiness, and I was always looking for it in people, places, and things, right? And unfortunately in all the wrong places. But becoming a prostitute was never something on my list, right? That wasn't something I dreamt to be. Of course, no little girl does. And like you mentioned, human trafficking is worldwide, and it affects men and women alike. Yes, the majority of women or victims are women who end up in prostitution. But of course, sex trafficking does affect both male and female. So when we think about that, young childhood experience, it really matters, because a lot of us do come from high risk vulnerabilities, trauma, etc. Some of us, don't have that, and we grow up in a good environment, but something happens along the way and we get in situations and then we can't get out, right? Everyone comes from a different situation, but I'll tell you, no one dreams of becoming a prostitute. Like, that isn't the things that we aspire to be. And certainly that wasn't my case. I went to vocational high school. I became a hairdresser at 18. I was going to community college. I wanted to be a journalist, and I had dreams and goals. But I fortunately met a guy at a local nightclub up on the North Shore. People might be familiar with it. It was called the Palace. And I was there young, drinking, partying, and he knew some friends of mine, right? He wasn't a complete stranger. And that's the thing too, is that trafficking most likely happens with someone that that, it's most likely someone that you trust. Yes, do people get kidnapped and pulled into the commercial sex trade and trafficking? Absolutely. But for the majority of it, it's someone that whether it's a family member or someone that gets to know you by gaining your trust. And this guy, exchanged phone numbers with me. He knew some friends of mine. He bought me a drink. I was impressed. It didn't take much. He was handsome. He was dressed nice. He had lots of cash. And we got together a few days later, and he started the grooming process, right? I had no idea I would become a victim of this. I thought he was my boyfriend. He really got me to love and trust him. He met my family, came over for holidays. There was plenty of red flags right there. I will say, he was probably a drug dealer. But again, you have to think of these different streams of influence, right? Our culture and society and the movies and the music and the things that we grow up around kind of normalize or glamorize that lifestyle of drug dealing or fast money. And then you think about prostitution. It's always sold as women's empowerment, like when it's trying to be glamorized, remember that movie Pretty Woman, and different things like
Pretty Woman walking down the street, that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Richard Gere, was the savior, and Julia Roberts was so beautiful, and it looked like that's the choice that she made, and she was able to get out of that life. And it's always sold as that, but no one ever tells you the reality of the downfall of what really happens in the commercial sex trade, except like obviously your documentary, because that's a real true story, right? So we always have to be wary of Hollywood and in the music industry, et cetera, because it's most likely a lie. It's the fallacy, the facade that they sell. And so getting into this relationship, there was those red flags, but I overlooked them, or again, it was glamorized and normalized. It was fine. But he worked on me and he groomed me over a period of like 3 to 6 months. And he got me to believe that this was going to be a way to make money and have a family and a business and like ride off into the sunset. And unfortunately, it took a while, about 3 to 6 months. He'd plant plenty seeds of doubt in my mind, telling me that, my dreams and goals weren't good enough and working in a hair salon wasn't going to pay the bills and I could own one. And the kicker always is, you're having sex anyways, you might as well get paid for it. And, the story goes on from there. But yeah, that's just who I was. That's where I was coming from. And I had my own brokenness and I was naive and I was young and I got into a situation before I knew it, I couldn't get out. And it kept me trapped for 5 years.
How old you were then, and what are the grooming process? Because many young girls out there, they date online and they might meet someone, which is it's so common. I met my husband online as well. So not everyone is bad there, but there are plenty of bad people. So what are the signals or red flags you would, right now looking back in your life, you would say to girls, don't you ever follow this trap?
Right. Great question. I mean, online wasn't a thing back then. So when I met him, we met up and he had a fancy car and he had lots of money and jewelry and bling and nice clothes. And it was obviously that he was a drug dealer, right? Because he wasn't coming from a wealthy family. He was raised in the inner city of Boston, didn't have a father. He was kind of the breadwinner of the family, like a street hustler, and selling guns and drugs wasn't ever discussed, but it was just known and it was, again, normalized or accepted. So a lot of times when I speak to young girls, I'm like, note to self, right? Don't date the drug dealer. Like, just don't do it. It's not helpful. It's not good. With that fast money and that fast lifestyle comes a lot of violence and control and danger, etc. But today online, I mean, yes, it is so sad how the internet has exploded in such a negative way. And like you said, you're using it for good for this interview, and I'm grateful for that. But the majority, think about like Instagram and how it's just progressed. And these young girls are already like half naked, exposing themselves to get all these followers. And then OnlyFans comes along and says, hey, you're already posting on Instagram half naked. Why don't you post on OnlyFans and get paid for it? Right. And you have a whole subscriber base. And now you're posting porn, especially. And these subscribers, again, which are mostly men, right? The demand, unfortunately, can have direct access to you and start asking for certain types of pictures and or videos and meeting up. It's just like this slow progression. And it's super dangerous and it's really a problem. And I've even spoken in middle schools. And I asked the girls if they know or they know anyone with an OnlyFans or if they have one. And like the majority raised their hand. So it's just crazy that even as young as middle school, they're aware of OnlyFans. They know people who have OnlyFans, which leads me into the whole discussion about pornography and how that plays a role in the commercial sex trade and how that's so readily available today. And young kids are exposed to it by the time they're 8, 9 years old. They're addicted very young. It changes the chemicals in the brain. It's like a drug, etc. So things are just so advanced and moving forward so fast. And it's everywhere, right? From, again, movies and TV shows to the tablets and the internet, even like going shopping for my 12-year-old. I can't find anything that's age appropriate. Everything is too short and too tight. And it's just over sexualized everywhere we look. So it's just all around us. And you have to know your identity and your worth. And you have to not fall into that trap that the world is offering right now.
Now, going back to your story, so you were young and you had an empty heart and you were broken, like you said, and not knowing your identity and your worth and your value. And that led you to meeting a wrong guy who probably spoke nice things to you and made you to believe that you will be with him forever and he will make you happy and rich and etc. So tell me how the process of getting into this cycle that we often call human trafficking. And when you go sucked into that cycle, it's hard to get out of it, right? So when do you, what's the process of getting into that cycle?
Yeah. So it's
How can you describe it, please?
absolutely. So the more trauma that you come into it, the better for a trafficker, because the less they have to do to break you down, because your prior trauma, especially early childhood trauma, has already affected you. So 80 to 90% of women who end up in the commercial sex trade already have been sexually abused as children. So that dial's already turned. And if the average age into the commercial sex trade is between 12 and 14, which is a fact, can you think about how young and how the brain isn't developed and how much trauma you already have? And when a trafficker comes around and promises what was so freely taken is now going to get paid for, this seems like an upgrade, right? So they want to work and they want to spot your vulnerabilities and see how much they can break you down. And for me, my trafficker had to do a lot of coercion, a lot of love bombing, as they would call it now, right? A lot of manipulation. And to help people understand, I try to say it's like being in a cult, right? It's like mental and emotional bondage. Yes, do women get kidnapped and shoved in crates and shipping containers and things like that? Yes, I've talked to women that's happened to, and kidnapped and held against their will. But for the majority of us, it's this relational, over time, getting to know you, getting to you to love them and trust them, and then breaking you down slowly but surely to get you to do whatever it is that they want, based on the promise of love. So if the number one thing is, if a trafficker can make you believe you chose that life to be a prostitute, then it's your fault. And you stay longer because you became a willing participant. And it's my fault, and I'm stuck, and I'm no good, and I'm a dirty prostitute. No one's going to love me. I'm never going to be able to work again, right? And so you just stay in these cycles of, oppression and brokenness. And then you go on, and then sometimes, you make $1,000 a day, and that makes you feel confident. And like, oh, look how much money I just made. And yes, I am the one in control and I have this power. But it always leaves you empty and dead, right? You don't come out of the commercial sex trade unscathed. It does deep, deep soul damage. And it gives you such a false sense of security and a false sense of power. Because at the end of the day, you do not feel good about having sex with strangers all day, every day. And it's inherently violent, right? I can't tell you how many experiences I had with men who were so violent and or so disgusting and strange. And, you would be relieved when you had just like an easy customer, right? And you could just like do whatever and move on, because it's just these high highs and these low lows. It's just constant, never knowing what you're going to do. So your body's always in this constant state of like hyper arousal and stress, and the adrenaline's always flowing. Just think about like your body's like never at rest. There's just never peace. And that's why substance use comes into play very often, because we're looking for an escape. We're looking to somehow cope with all this constant trauma in our body and our minds. And so I didn't use drugs for the 5 years that I was under my trafficker. But once I was able to get away from him, I didn't do it on purpose, but I got addicted. And that was the way I coped, because I just wanted the pain to go away. But then unfortunately that pushed me back into the life of prostitution, not with a pimp, but with a growing drug habit. And then, we know that doesn't go well, because you can't do drugs and live a normal, productive life, and life would unravel. But anyway, I forget the beginning of your question, but I hope I answered something.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, when I've heard you speak last year, that there is a cycle. So there is a way of kind of, probably scientifically, probably they broke it down. There is a stage of honeymoon, probably when the pimp is, like you said, doing love bombing, and you building trust in relationships. And he's gaining your trust, and then slowly, probably through gifts, through words of affirmation, and spending time with you and saying all these incredible words to you, and you believe this person. And then slowly, how do they start introducing you? Okay, let's now start sex trafficking. Do they say that, or how does it like even start? Or do they say, oh, look, you're so beautiful, you can make money with your body?
Yeah, some women, a lot of times the bait and switch, right? You think you're going in for modeling or nannying, stuff like that. And then it abruptly changes, or things get weird. And then you feel like you have to do whatever they're asking you to do because now you feel obligated. And I want to say that not always men aren't always traffickers, that women can be as well. So it's just always based on an unmet need. And the trafficker is going to figure out what that unmet need is and exploit that. And yes, you get caught in these cycles and then you can't get out.
And then I've heard in the movie Sound of Freedom, they say that sometimes using people, men and women in human trafficking, it's even better than using drugs, because drugs you used once and it's done, but a person you can use over and over and over again and reuse it and make more money than drugs. And so how do you know the statistics? How long does the woman can take such an abuse on her body? And I remember you shared with me some numbers that you were seeing men, or 2 or 3 or more than one man at multiple times a day. And just can you share about that? What was the darkest hour of that period of your time?
I mean,
of your life?
yeah. For me, when I was being exploited, my trafficker had me in massage parlors, which, would be a brothel essentially. And today you're not going to find American massage parlors. Those are all going to be Asian, which is a whole nother conversation about how women get brought here to America with the promise of a better life, and they don't know what they're getting into. And then their passports and documents get taken away. They don't speak the language. They have an incredible amount of debt to pay off that they never will. And it's so shameful in their culture, like obviously. So today, most of the exploitation is happening online, and that's the means where they're posting ads on these different websites, and you're going into homes and hotels and businesses, and it's inherently more dangerous because there's no one, like at the massage parlor, out front at the desk making sure everything goes okay. So just experiencing violence, it is really gender inequality at its core. Where the demand, unfortunately, again, is men. I'm not a man hater, right? I'm married. I have sons. It's not it. But for men coming to have a trafficking situation, right? What do you need? A victim, a buyer, and a trafficker. And obviously, we're all coming out of a broken system. We're all coming out of a situation that isn't okay. And for the buyer, they have a sexual addiction, a sexual brokenness that thinks it's okay to purchase people for their sexual desires. And again, that's because they don't know the truth, because the sex trade has been sold as women's empowerment, and that it appears that these women want to be here, that they like it. Because if we were to tell you the truth about what's really going on in our lives, it wouldn't be a good time. So it's really taxing mentally and emotionally to always have to be someone else to every other buyer. To this buyer, I have this story. To that buyer, I have that story. And I can't tell you, all the stories of how many colleges I was in. And, I was going to college for this and that, because I couldn't tell them what was really going on in my life, because it wouldn't be any fun and they wouldn't want to pay me. And then my trafficker would beat me for not having enough cash. Right. So it's just all this cycle of lies, and it's just so fake, and it's exhausting.
Yeah. Like you said, it started with you having an empty, broken heart. And out of the heart of men and women, we have thoughts and we have evil things. And it going back to the heart again. What do you think today, as experience, and now you're an advocate, you're a speaker, you do your outreach and you help so many women. Today, what would you say human trafficking? Where does human trafficking now stands? Do you think the awareness of human trafficking helped, or do you think we still have to do a lot of work? And what can every person play in this whole human trafficking awareness? Every person can play a role, right?
Yeah.
In preventing.
Yes, absolutely. I think the anti-trafficking movement has come a long way. It's been, probably 25, maybe 30 years since advocates and survivors have been doing the work to raise awareness about trafficking. Domestic violence is probably like 50 years in the making, right? Where everybody for the most part, is aware of domestic violence and what that looks like. Maybe not, exactly the power and control, but they understand aspects of domestic violence, and people are able to identify and, go to domestic violence shelters and get the support they need. Well, recently, I've been doing the work probably about 12 years. And recently, in the past, I'd probably say a couple of years, women are actually coming into treatment centers. I work more closely with substance use treatment centers because those are the women I'm really looking for, women that have substance use histories, that have that exploitation in their past, that keep going through the cycles of addiction and homelessness and exploitation. And I try to help break those cycles. So with that, a lot of women are coming into treatment self-identifying, saying I'm a survivor of trafficking, or I was exploited, or I was forced into prostitution. Because now we've done so much work in the anti-trafficking movement, and there has been so much awareness and education around it that people are really starting to understand it. So that is exciting. That is good. There are a lot of people who still don't know about it or understand it, but it's way less than it used to be. Healthcare facilities are trained, law enforcement are trained, churches, schools. I mean, so many people have had conversations about it that it's really gained some momentum, and it's great. It's been in the news. That's really helpful, in the media, where they're sharing real survivor stories and documentaries. And there's so many nonprofits and ministries that are doing such great work, and survivor leaders across the country, and laws are being changed, and it's really great. And safe homes have opened. There used to be only a small number of beds, when I first started this work. And now there's I want to say upwards to almost 800 beds across America that are for survivors of trafficking, sex trafficking, where, that number was not that large when I first started. While obviously 800 is still not enough, it's still come a long way. And I will tell you that a lot of faith-based organizations have stepped up to fill that gap and open up those homes with the beds. And so that's been really encouraging and exciting too. So there has been so much momentum, and it's been really great to watch over the years.
That's wonderful to hear that there is a good momentum, and even in the midst of darkness, there is shine coming through, and that's wonderful to hear. Now, going back to your story, and I hope you hear me well. You don't see me, but you hear me. When was that pivotal moment when you were, for how many years you were in human trafficking?
I was with my trafficker for 5 years. And once I got out from him and I got addicted, I was in the life of exploitation, prostitution with an addiction for another 3 years or so. So about 8 years.
Altogether 8 years. When was that moment when you reached the bottom of this darkness, of this pit, where you turned to that light and transformation started?
Yeah, I mean, because of my addiction, that's where you hit rock bottom. I mean, right, you can't do drugs and live a normal, healthy, productive life. And I was a heroin addict. I was sleeping on park benches. I was overdosing. I was stealing from my family. I had great grandparents that were so kind and loving to me. And I even started to manipulate and steal from them. I drove my parents crazy. I was really doing things that I never would have imagined. And it's because of that shame and that trauma. And my brother passed away in 2007 from an overdose. Unfortunately, we shared similar stories where, unfortunately, he was sexually abused as a kid. And that just gave him a life path that he never found healing for. And he became a male prostitute himself, and contracted HIV, and really got involved in the whole gay lifestyle and the party drugs and all the things. And by the time he was 36, his body was tired, he was beat up, and he overdosed on crystal meth, and he had just didn't wake up one night. And so with him passing, that became a point where I really had to take a good look at myself, because I thought, I'm going to die, right? I keep using, I'm overdosing. This isn't the life I want to live, but I just didn't know how to change. And people started talking to me about going into treatment and AA and NA meetings. And I wasn't interested, but I knew I just couldn't live like this anymore. It becomes very hopeless and depressing and dark. And I finally went into treatment, and I gained some clarity. And takes a long time, right? For most of us, we don't go into treatment once, but it took a multiple attempts. And finally, in 2007, I went into my last treatment center. It was actually down Plymouth, Massachusetts. And this treatment center was really supportive and great. They had great counselors. And I just was ready. I was tired. I was done. I wanted to change my life. And one of the counselors there just looked me in the eyes with compassion. And he had caught wind of my story. And he just looked me in the eye and said, "You never have to sell yourself again." And I thought, wow, I don't. Okay. I don't, I can do this. And just one step at a time, put my life together. Christian faith became my way of life. I was in AA meetings and did the 12 steps and was on this spiritual journey and wanted to understand who the higher power was that they all talked about. And someone invited me to a Christian church. And that's when I met God through, in Jesus. And my life completely changed because I finally felt that hole, right, that we talked about in the beginning, that emptiness filled. And it was filled with God's love, and God's people were so kind and loving to me. The women took me right under their wing, and the men were appropriate. They didn't want anything from me. There was no deals to be made. And I just got well, organically, I guess, in the community and the church, and put my life together one day at a time, one step at a time, and made plenty of mistakes. I still do to this day, obviously. I've been out, I think it'll be 17 years this year.
Woohoo!
Yeah. And so I've learned a lot, definitely. But I would say just being tired and knowing that there was a better way, that hope was planted in there. I just had to, really dig deep and fight for it.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. So it took 17 years where you are now a new creation, a transformed person from the inside out. And now, so through this process of healing, what do you think, as you right now share your story to the world, what do you think the most important to know for people who perhaps contemplating of change? What are the advice you would give, where to start if they want to transform their life completely?
I mean, you got to surrender, right? We have to turn it over. And in AA, the first step is, we turn our lives over to, our lives are first of all unmanageable. That's the first step. Your life is unmanageable. You can't manage it on your own. And then you come to believe that there's a power greater than you, right? And then finally, you're willing to accept that and you're ready to turn it over. You have to surrender. You have to be able to do that and let go of the control. And I know that's really hard and scary, especially if it's to a God you don't understand. But you have to know that there's just a better way out there. And usually we don't do such a good job at running our own lives. And if you have a past like mine, if you have a history, you look back and say, right, I make some pretty bad decisions, apart from myself, apart from God, I obviously can't do this really well. So I need God to take the wheel here. I need to surrender that. I need to give up the control and trust, and that's where that faith comes in. And with that, you have to partner with God in the sense of you have to do the work, right? You have to do the work of recovery. You have to go to counseling, therapy, meetings, do the journaling, learn new skills, whatever it is, to do the work daily, right? Recovery is a daily thing where we're constantly working on things because we all have shortcomings. We all have habits and hangups and things that we need to work on. But as you grow deeper and you gain that stability and the doors start to open, then you can work on the forgiveness. And I know forgiveness has a lot to do with healing from trauma. And that's not something I set out to do necessarily, but through my relationship with God and through my recovery process, I forgave myself, my trafficker, the men, all the things, really had to work through. And the shame is a really big aspect of the healing because shame is probably, I'd say, the number one tool of the enemy that keeps us sick, keeps us silent, keeps us in the dark. There's a saying in AA or in recovery, we say you're only as sick as your secrets, right? And the things that we hold on to and that we try to bury keep us weighted down. And sometimes you can even see it in someone's countenance or the way they carry themselves. If they're hunched over, if they just feel so heavy and so dark, it's because maybe they're hanging on to stuff that shouldn't be, and a lot of times it does come from that early childhood trauma that happened to us. And we have to recognize that that wasn't our fault, right? We can't help what happened to us, because if we were children, even if we were older, like myself, getting into a situation like that, like learning that I was manipulated and coerced, helped me realize that I was a victim, right? And once I realized that, I didn't make that choice necessarily to be a prostitute, but I was coerced and manipulated into it. And then when I changed my mind, he used force and violence and more manipulation and more coercion to keep me trapped. I realized that I was a victim, and I didn't want to act in that mindset anymore. So this empowered me to realize that I was a survivor. And if I'm a survivor of this, then I'm empowered, and the shame has no grip on me anymore, that I'm healed and I can be set free and move forward. But you have to be willing to do that and move forward and talk about it. But I also want to say, when you're a child and things happen to you and you don't have control over that, what you do have control over today is your healing journey, right? We have to be held accountable, today, for our own healing, for our own recovery. We can't keep blaming the past and or our abusers and, being unforgiving. What do they say when you're not forgiving someone? It's like you're drinking the poison, hoping that the other person dies, right? Like we can't keep in those cycles. And so it is our responsibility to be well and to work on healing and recovery and all those things today.
So you were a victim and now you're a victor.
Amen. Yeah.
And healing is a lifelong process, right? You still have, until we die, we have layers and layers that we uncover. And as we go deep, we go wide. As we reach into our soul and get healing, we go wide and make deep influence around in our community. And I wanted to ask you, I know that as I have friends who are recovered alcoholic or drug addicts, there are times of relapse because your brain structure changes, as we know, and also mental health, depression plays a role. Is it a thing for human trafficking survivors or those who were victims to relapse and going back into human trafficking again? Is it a thing?
Absolutely. It's a giant thing. Way worse than domestic violence. They say the average victim goes back into the domestic violence relationship at least 7 times. And I'll say, wow, for trafficking victims, it's probably double that or more. Like I went back and forth in my trafficking situation more times than I can count, because the trauma bonding is so intense and so over.
Can I pause you for a second? Yeah. What is trauma bonding? I never heard such a term before.
So when you talk about Stockholm syndrome, that's the real term for it. And then so we say trauma bonding. So based on the violence and the trauma, you end up bonding with the person. This becomes so normalized in part of the relationship. And these cycles of sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're mean. It's like the domestic violence, but on steroids, right? Because of the shame that you're feeling from the exploitation. So you bond based on the violence that's being perpetuated, because the original relationship started on love and feelings of attachment. And that doesn't end up happening, but it's too late. And so now you're bonded in this really unhealthy, toxic way. And it's very hard to break that. And, if you want to get spiritual, then you start talking about soul ties and all these other things that binds us to people and how unhealthy it can be. And it's just hard to break those cycles. And again, when it's mixed in with your identity, or you think about codependency, right? Where you're so enmeshed and you don't know where you begin and where the other person ends. Like everything is hinged on what that person's going to do or how they're going to react. And you can't do anything without their control or without their say, and I was like so brainwashed and so manipulated. Like everything I did, I wasn't handcuffed to a radiator, right? But I was in mental and emotional bondage. And I cooked, I cleaned, I went to the store. I did everything that I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to do it, because I was trained. I guess you could, even liken it to like mind control, right? Again, I think I mentioned it earlier on, like, it's just like being in a cult, right? It's this mental and emotional bondage. It's wild.
Well, it looks like human trafficking is such a big mountain. There are so many layers and aspects of it. And also when it comes to human trafficking awareness and survival, there are also agents, there are professionals, there are counselors, there are educators. Can you speak on that? If like today we have people watching, and especially with different documentaries like Sound of Freedom coming out and other wonderful interviews like yours, and average person looking at this and they are heartbroken. They see millions and millions of children and people that are trafficked, and people and humans are not for sale. And just knowing the fact that there are more people trafficked today than ever in time in history of humankind breaks hearts of normal person that has compassion and love of God. And with the average person that is looking today and just asking the question, oh my God, what can I do? Should I go and learn professional skill, how to work with police and FBI and rescue women and men and children? Should I go into prevention? What would you say to average person today? Where they can start in prevention of human trafficking?
Yeah. I mean, first things first, whatever it is, you have to know your gifts, your calling, your passion. Not everyone that learns about trafficking is going to be called into the anti-trafficking movement. But what I will say is you have to talk about it. You have to follow it on social media. You have to share the information. You have to talk to your children, the young people in your life, nieces, nephews, cousins, the youth, however you can, and prevent it, because education is the best prevention. There are some really great resources and books out there that I can think of that I'll share right now. So there's a great book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. This book is geared for 2 to 5 year olds, and then there's a 6 to 12 year old. There's two different editions, and it is such a powerful book for adults to read with the kids in their lives, because it's not when your kid is, it's not if your kid is exposed to pornography, it's when, right? Because today's digital age and these kids are on tablets like as young as 2 years old, right? So by accident, they're going to pop around and beep and boop and all these things and just be exposed to inappropriate images. And it can fuel the commercial sex trade in that way. I'm even familiar with, I've heard a story of a sex therapist who has a client as young as 6 who's been exposed to porn and thinks it's okay to have sex with anyone at any time because she's been exposed to porn for a numerous amount of time and her brain is changed. So that is a great resource, right? Good pictures, bad pictures. Have these conversations, even if it's uncomfortable and difficult, with kids. There's another great prevention curriculum that anybody can do with the youth. It's written by a survivor. It's called the Cool Aunt series. And her name is Rachel Thomas, and she's the cool aunt. And she does this whole prevention curriculum. I believe it's 10 weeks. I could be wrong, or 10 lessons. So you can do it over time, but it's an online thing, and an adult or a mentor, whoever does it with the youth. And it just explains what trafficking is, the different types of coercion, the different types of sex trafficking, and how it can happen and how you prevent it and what are the red flags and how do you get out, etc. Such a great tool. I wish it was in every school. And then, of course, definitely anti-trafficking organizations that put out the documentaries or interview survivors, read survivor books. Obviously, that's really important. And just share and talk about it, because it's the only way that it's going to be made known and prevented.
So basically, by viewing pornography, you're supporting the whole industry, which is billions and billions of dollars industry. So it starts with your eyes and with your heart. We're going back to our heart. So the empty heart drives the decision and thought. It starts in our thoughts. let the meditation, let the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be pleasing to you. So the meditation in the heart starts there, and then it leads us to clicking the website, and here we go, the cycle.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so many women in pornography are trafficked as well. And then you think about, child sex trafficking and child pornography. It is just huge. It's huge. It's a huge industry, and it is so devastating. Right. And again, if there wasn't such a demand, there wouldn't be such a supply. So we have to have these conversations.
Right. Now, as we wrap up today, so I feel like we just scratching the surface. There's so much more, and we just started to dip our feet in this human trafficking global issue. And it's not just global, as we said. It's not just some countries that we never heard of, but also it's in Europe. It's in America. It's in California. It's everywhere in the whole world, and it's in our doorstep. It's in our neighborhoods. So, as we wrap up today, what's your, a conclusion of this interview, and what would you say to our guests who are listening to you today, who are saying, "What can I do, and where can I start?"
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having this conversation, for doing this. This is such a great way to spread the awareness to more people. I want to say, if there's anyone out there that is watching this that is a survivor of trafficking or exploitation and they need support and resources, they can reach out personally to me. The website is jasminegrace.org, and you can follow us on Facebook, which is Jasmine Grace Outreach, or even on Instagram, Jasmine Grace Outreach. You can read my book. You can find it on the website, but it's sold through Amazon, and it's called The Diary of Jasmine Grace, Trafficked, Recovered, Redeemed. I think that book is really powerful for people who haven't survived the commercial sex trade, because they can understand the mind of a victim. But then also people who have gone through it, once they read it, the light bulbs start going on. They start realizing they're not the only ones, that they're not alone, that they're not crazy. And it's really helpful and impactful in that way. So again, read survivor books, watch documentaries, follow the anti-trafficking organizations. I can think of some great national organizations. Shared Hope International is a great resource. They have tons of educational material. I think of the National Center of Commercial Exploitation, NCOSE. They are awesome to follow. They do a lot of advocacy work in Washington and legislation work. So many different survivor-led organizations, even local in Massachusetts, My Life, My Choice, mentors at-risk girls and girls who have been commercially sexually exploited. I also think they mentor boys now as well, because that is a growing population, obviously, that's being exploited. Just know what's going on in New England, get involved, stay connected, sign up for our newsletter. We have tons of events. We're missionaries, so we do this work by raising our own support. We have the outreach Bags of Hope, and then we have the home where women can come and stay and live with us for up to 2 years as they work on their healing and their recovery with their children if they have them. And that home is called Living Hope Farms. So again, you can find the information on the website, and you can support us, share the information, do a Bags of Hope donation drive, just any way you can be part of the solution, right? You always want to be part of the solution. And I think those are great ways to plug in.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And we actually have a question come in as we were going live. And I want to say thank you so much, Jasmine, for this time. And I want to say thank you to a wonderful tech support behind the scenes. And we know that not everything, life is not perfect. So I'm glad that it still worked out for us to take this wonderful interview. From Cheryl Laporter, she asked, how can the average person become equipped to effectively aid people and end trafficking? I bet we talked about it around this topic, but maybe you can speak more on that. It seems like people are really inspired and really want to start now. What can we do today?
Right. And again, educate yourself. Go to those websites, visit Shared Hope International, Safe House Project, Nkosi, visit my website, read survivor books. I'm serious, not just, I don't read my book, but really read survivor books. I'm thinking of another great survivor. Her name is Teresa Flores, and the name of her book is called A Slave Across the Street. There's another amazing survivor on the, I think she's in Texas now, Rebecca Bender. She has written a couple of great books. You just want to educate yourself. And then if you're a praying person, right, you want to pray, you want to ask the Lord where you should go, how he wants to use you. You know, it's like, here I am, Lord, right? Send me. You might have all these great thoughts and ideas, but we know the Lord leads and he guides, and wherever he takes us, as we have to just have these willing hearts to go. But on the flip side, if you don't know exactly, you just educate yourself and you take the next step and you go wherever the doors open, and you have conversations, and one thing leads to the next. You mentioned the movie Sound of Freedom. Well, I think, that was a good movie. It did kind of over glamorize a little bit for me, too much. But I do appreciate it. But and because it wasn't set in America, there was a lot of hype around it. And of course, those things do happen in other countries. And of course, they happen to children. But again, to bring our focus here and what that looks like, if you work in healthcare, if you're a teacher, if you're in law enforcement, like, you just want to be compassionate. You want to be non-judgmental. You just want to be available. Because when a victim is ready to exit the commercial sex trade, they just need one safe, supportive person to reach out to. And you just never know who you're going to run into if you can be that person's safe person. I've worked with many women whose safe person was a cab driver, an Uber driver, a store owner, a church lady. You just never know when the Lord's going to use you. So you just be open, be compassionate, non-judgmental, and be available, and you see what happens.
Just last question. How is it like to share your story again and again and again? Are you tired, or do you find strength to share it again? And is it painful or is it joyful for you to share it?
That's a great question. Really, God told me early on it was my story for his glory. So I didn't want to share it first. Like, who wants to be transparent and authentic in front of a bunch of strangers? But I did. I pressed in. And when I did early on, women would come up to me with tears streaming down their face, telling me they had the same story.
Wow.
Especially women in church. One woman came up to me and said, I have 18 years and I have the same story, but I won't talk about it because I'm too ashamed. And I just kept sharing because I knew it was breaking off the chains and it was setting other women free. And I did that. And now, sharing it, I'm humbled. I'm honored, again, that God would see fit to use me. I'm really messy, I'm just a homeschool mom that drives a minivan with 5 kids. And, I do the best I can to be faithful with what he's given me. But no, it is not tiring. It is my complete joy and honor to serve the Lord however he sees fit.
I thought it would be appropriate if you would say a prayer, because the problem is so huge, human trafficking, and sometimes I feel overwhelmed. And if there's so many millions of people trafficked and affected, what am I? Just one person. What can I do? But I know that there's God Almighty who can do all things. And through prayer, we can get access to this incredible power that enables us to be life changers, to be world changers, one heart at a time. So will you say a quick prayer as we end?
Absolutely. Thank you. Lord, I just come before you, God. I thank you and praise you again, Lord. And again, thank you for your sovereignty, your mercy, and your grace. Lord, I pray for this, that when it goes out, while it's going out now, Lord, that you just touch hearts and heal hearts and bring people to know the truth about the reality of trafficking, the truth about you, the truth about your forgiveness and your healing, Lord, and that your arms are open to receive all of us that come to you with broken and messed up lives, Lord, that we don't have to be perfect, but that you meet us right where we are at. And I thank you for saving and redeeming and healing me, Lord. And I pray that over all those people, those women, especially, Lord, that are out there still sick and suffering and struggling, Lord, I pray that you reach out and send your workers, Lord. The harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few, Lord. So I pray that you send them out and just as we do your work, Lord, grow your kingdom. And I just pray over Ina and her team and her coffee shop, and you just bless their efforts, Lord God. And I thank you for her life, and I thank you for her partnership and her friendship. And I just praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And I wish you that this year, 2024, will be a year of heavenly success for you, that you will share your story unapologetically, boldly, confidently, and reach many, many hearts, one heart at a time, that many girls, many women, many men through your story will find a glimpse of hope, that they will not be afraid, like you said, to surrender and put their trust and start their healing process. And thank you so much for sharing your story so unapologetically, so unshamedly. And it's such a beautiful testament. There's no one who's hopeless. Even in the big global issues, human trafficking that touches people in our neighborhood, we can do something. We should speak about it. We should not be quiet, but we should shine our light with kindness, with awareness, with messages of hope like yours. So thank you again. And I'm pretty sure that we will, if God's willing, we will see each other again. And again, thank you for all that you do. And tell me about your next event. And with that, we will end our interview.
Yeah. We have an event up here in New Hampshire next Tuesday night, I believe. It's on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook page, it is posted there. It's a local trafficking awareness event. So it's myself and a few other local anti-trafficking organizations that will be there having a panel discussion, talking about what trafficking looks like in New Hampshire and how we're helping women exit and recover and how they can be a part of that and, again, learn and share the resources and information. And I have so many other events coming up, speaking in New York at a college. We have just so many things on the calendar. I can't keep things straight, but we always post it on our Facebook account. That's more easy for me to manage. So if there are events, they'll be up there. So again, follow us on socials, Jasmine Grace Outreach. And then my website is jasminegrace.org if you want to reach out personally or if you need some support or anything like that. So thank you.
Last question. How's your friend that you came with, your assistant?
Which was it? Was it Jen that came with me last time?
Jen, who were following you, and she was just clueless about anything, and she was just following you for a year, 2 or 3, and then she decided to give her heart to Jesus and follow him.
Absolutely, yes. And now she's married, she's pregnant, she'll be having a baby this summer. So she is like the best, wonderful, amazing success story. And she has an art business, and she does a lot of our social media and marketing. And she's super creative and she's great. Yes, her name is Jen.
That's wonderful. Say hi to her. Thank you again and have a wonderful night. And next time, bring your puppy for us, for the world to see again.
I certainly will. Thank you.
He loves you so much. He was like, let me in, Mom.
Yes, sleeping right there.
Thank you, Jasmine. God bless you. Thank you for all that you do. Keep up the good work. Never give up. You're amazing.
Thank you so much.
If I wanna change the world.